Hello again, everyone. I tried to do this video once before, and for some reason my camera turned off in the middle. So I'm going to try this again. This is set A of the ShinHan professional designer gouache. And for those of you that don't know, I already swatched set B, and I'm going to put a link to that video. And there was a recent sale on gouache at Jackson's, so I decided to go ahead and essentially complete my set. There's some colors that in their line that are missing, but certainly plenty for me. But I'm going to go ahead and swatch these. So I'm going to put the box, actually let me put this box on my lap again. My lap seems to serve well. So I have some watercolor swatches that are on the other side here that are still, yeah, they're still a little wet, so they're drying. So I'm going to leave the book open and do my swatches here. All right. So this is alizarin crimson, and I'm not going to go through all of the pigments in all of the paints just because that'll take a lot of time. Oh, but I don't think I told you, because I did in the other video that somehow wasn't working. The brush that I'm using today is a Silver Silk 88 in a size 8 in a chisel blender. So it's basically a very short squared brush, and really it's meant for blending things around the edges or things like that, but I really like the feel of the bristles, so I'm gonna try it with this gouache today, and we'll see how I like it as a gouache brush. So like I said, this is alizarin crimson, and oh man, that was way too much. Let's see if I can, yeah. So if that happens, sometimes you can do, I don't know if you saw what I did there, you can actually, my brush is a little too wet, let me damp that off. So if it's, you can try and squeeze it up into the tube, and it actually worked this time. It doesn't always work. You may just end up with more paint on the page, but I was lucky today. All right, so this is alizarin crimson. And for those of you familiar with gouache, you'll know that gouache is essentially opaque watercolor. And I don't want to make the swatches too big. I'm definitely gonna put less paint down in the later swatches. Okay, and what I did last time, which I'm going to do this time, boy, that's another really saturated red. They have really saturated reds. I have to rinse really, really well because of that. But I'm going to put a little water on here, and then I'm going to dilute it out on the end there so that you can see what it looks like diluted. This is a super, super pigmented, I think it even stained the brush, which is fine. I don't mind that, but yeah, as you can see, my brush is now a red brush, but that's okay. I'm gonna try and go for less this time. Okay, so this next one is carmine. And actually I do wanna see, okay, yeah, I did do smaller swatches. So these here, which you can't really see on this page, are my swatches of set B. So I did do smaller swatches, so I'm going to try to, how many did I fit? Five per row. So let's see what I need to adjust to do that. Okay. And that was just a lot of paint. Okay. And these tubes, because they're rather new, are kind of stiff. So basically, and this material is just like, you know, a thin metal. Sometimes when you press it, it'll press in really far and give you a ton of paint. So I'm trying to avoid that. And this, like I said, is carmine. And let's see. Okay, so I'm probably gonna try and do like half that size. And it is really smooth, but you'll notice as you run out of paint towards the edges, it gets a little feathery. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is, still with paint on the brush, I'm gonna dampen and pull it out a little bit. I think this was probably with more water than as opposed to pigment than I probably would have normally used. Man, those reds are strong. my water is now completely red. All right, and next we have Scarlet Red. One thing to note about these is I have heard that they're not always the most accurate as far as their light fastness goes. And you know, this isn't like super professional grade gouache. So if you really wanted something that you could sell, you know, I would probably go for Schminke or Winsor Newton or Holbein, you know, one of the super high-end gouaches. But this works great for what I want to use it for, which is just kind of playing around and learning how to use gouache. All right, this next one is Brilliant Orange. And that one's already helping me out, coming out a little bit. Okay. And I want to leave room for one more there, so we'll see. And this is Brilliant Orange, I said? Yeah, I was gonna say, this is orange, this is not red, and it is indeed. Okay, but when I do have quite a bit of paint left on my brush there, you can see. One of the trickiest things that I found with gouache is determining, you know, the paint to water ratio, which can be a little tricky. Okay, make sure I'm not skipping one. This is Permanent Yellow Orange. Okay. And, you know, determining how much paint you actually need. Like with all of these, I think I'm probably using more paint than I need, because at the end, it seems like there's quite a bit of color left. So I'm pretty happy with this brush performance with the gouache. I tend to like something a little stiffer with gouache because I don't want it kind of flopping around, because I do need to try and make layers more consistent than with watercolor, and this brush seems like it would do that. All right, so now we have Permanent Yellow. And some people have had issues with binder coming out at the top. You can mix them in the tube by using like a toothpick or something. In the last set, in set B, there was really only one color that I had trouble with. It was one of the earth colors, and now I can't remember which one. But so far so good here. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself. And then I have Lemon Yellow. And one of the reasons why I decided to go ahead and get the set A, is because I was looking to kind of supplement my other set, set B, with some colors that I thought were kind of missing, and the majority of those were in this set. So I was like, oh, let's just go ahead and do that. It's actually a really nice lemon yellow, very opaque, which is nice. One of the advantages to gouache being opaque, oops, clearly my water's a little dirty now, is that you can cover one layer with another opaque layer. You have to be kind of careful so that you're not reactivating it, but what did I say? Lemon yellow, and then we have olive green. And I think having such a big set like this is kind of, not necessarily a cheat, but sort of a way for me to get a little bit more used to the gouache and how it handles without worrying so much about a lot of mixing. But I do plan to do some mixing tests as well. So that was olive green. Now I have leaf green. A little bit of dust there. Okay, leaf green. Oops, top was not, to get it on straight. And that's a really pretty, oh geez, I clearly had some pigment from before left in my brush. Leaf green. Yeah, it's cause my water is now like completely red because of those first colors. I'm not gonna worry about too much about it today. So you know, your colors might be slightly off, but I don't think it'll be too bad. Because if I were on my own, I probably would go ahead and switch my water out. You can see that's how pink my water has become. But it's all right. We're gonna get to reds and pinks here shortly anyway. Okay, so that was leaf green, and now we have permanent green light. That was coming out pretty fast. And my brush was very dry this time. So you can see how I'm getting a little bit of like feathering at the end where it's not super wet. Yeah, and it's still working as far as diluting and not making everything red. Okay, that was permanent green light. The next color is emerald green. Oops. And it seems like you do kind of need different amounts of different colors to cover, but I'm trying to use less paint as I go. I guess we can really test the theory of how little paint can you use. Okay, a little bit of water there. All right, that was emerald green. And what you're hearing off to the side is me rinsing my brush. Man, these colors are so staining. So now I have a green brush. Wow, that's crazy. I probably, you know, to get that out, you might be able to use some soap brush or brush soap, but it might not work. This is Viridian. I want to be careful here because it seemed like a lot might come out there. Viridian. So I'm trying to organize them here in their little case. Sorry, we're getting really messy. Oh my goodness. I have butterfingers today. Okay. So this is Viridian. And most of these have been pretty opaque. This one maybe had a little bit of lack of opaqueness, but I think that could also be due to the amount of paint. There we go. Okay, that was Viridian. And then we're starting the second row here. And then we have aqua blue, which seems like a really pretty blue. Let's see. A little bit of binder there, but not too much. And I do wonder whether it depends on how long the paint's been sitting on the shelf as to whether, you know, the binder will pool up in the tube. And I think that places like Jackson's have a lot of turnover, so you're probably getting pretty fresh packages of paint. Okay, then we have turquoise blue. But yeah, given that the water that I'm using is getting so murky, I'm wondering how I would deal with that. Oh, I put too much water on my brush just now. Okay, so I'm gonna try, that actually worked okay with that amount of water, so that's interesting. And it's still opaque. And I'm going to add a little bit more water. Yeah, I'm wondering how many times I would have to change my water. So not really a good thing to use for plein air, I would think. Ultramarine Light is the next color. Okay. Oh, what a beautiful ultramarine. So I didn't used to like ultramarine. I think I may have mentioned this on the channel before, but after using it in my palette quite a bit, it's become one of my favorites. For watercolor, I generally don't use it on its own too much. It's usually a mixing color for me, but it's actually, still some pigment on my brush. These colors are so intense, you guys. So it's actually really good for skies if it's super diluted. Like with this, so because it's so pigmented, you probably need to really dilute it. So the next one is Prussian Blue. Oop. Prussian Blue. And Prussian Blue has always been one of my favorite blues. Really love it. And I can tell that this is going to stain my brush because it's super pigmented. Yes. So I suppose it's good to have super pigmented paint, but I also wonder, like, is there a happy medium between super pigmented that they're going to stain everything and, you know, pigmented enough to stay on the page? So this next one is Violet. Oop, that was definitely coming out there. This one's Violet. And like I said, if you want to know the pigment numbers on these, I would suggest going to, I don't know, does ShinHan have a website? I don't even know. But you can definitely find that information online. And I'll put a link to the product on Jackson's. I can't remember if they have the pigment info, but it's pretty high quality ingredients on these, but I think they're like, you know, one step below the super fancy gouaches. All right, so this is Rose. Oh, again, kind of coming out. It's interesting that the reds would, the red leaning colors would be jumpy. Yeah, this was one I was actually interested to see whether it would actually be pretty opaque, because colors like this tend to be pretty translucent. I think it's doing a pretty good job. That was Rose. And now we have Opera. It's like we're just gonna make it with the number of colors that will fit on here. That's Opera, which I do believe has fluorescent pigment in it. So as with every other medium, if you've got fluorescent pigments in there, it's not going to be 100% light fast. Okay, rinsing off my brush because all of these are super pigmented. Okay, we're going on to some earth colors now. So this is Yellow Ochre. I was kind of surprised that the other set didn't have Yellow Ochre, even though, you know, I have so much Yellow Ochre paint all over the place. I do really like it as a mixing color. It makes really nice greens with blues. that tend to be a little bit murkier than, you know, so like not a bright green like that. If I have room here, maybe I'll try and do that at the end. Let's see, how many colors do I have left? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll have a small space and maybe I'll do one green with yellow ochre at the end. So the next one is burnt sienna. And so far so good on these. This seemed a little more fluid coming out of the tube than some of the others. Burnt sienna is what this one is. It's actually a really nice tone of burnt sienna. Yes, definitely gonna need to change my water before I do anything else, for sure. Okay, so now we have burnt umber. Ooh, and that is a little fluid, but it's okay, I think. Let's try it. And actually, I'll have two spaces because I'm not going to swatch the white, because, you know, white's white, right? I will swatch the black, however, because there can be a lot of variance in black, actually. Okay, so that's burnt umber. And then the last one that I'll be swatching for you is ivory black. Uh-oh, looks like I had some pigment on my hand there. Yeah. I don't know which hand that was. Okay. Ivory black. One of the reasons why because I don't generally like black in watercolor, but I've noticed that when I try to mix darker colors with earth colors in gouache, it doesn't always have the desired effect of darkening a color, but black does. So I did want to get black. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, oh, and here's the white, permanent white, and I am not going to, although maybe what I'll do, since that first swatch is pretty big, I'm just gonna get a little bit from the tube and see if we can, yeah. So, and you have to make sure you don't do it too much so that you mix the color underneath, but because it's opaque, you can layer like that, even with lighter colors over dark, although I think it would be still probably wise to go light to dark, but who knows. Okay, so I said I was gonna mix a green with yellow ochre. So let's go ahead and get a little bit of yellow ochre. And, let's go with the one in the middle. That's this turquoise blue. Well, no, let's try ultramarine. See what we get with ultramarine. Because I do like me some ultramarine. Okay. I'm doing pretty equal amounts. I'm not sure if that's wise, but we'll see. We'll see what we get. Oh, see, yeah, okay, that's a good example. I probably added a little too much blue, but I'm not going to add more yellow ochre at this point. But you can see it's sort of a dark, dusky green, which is kind of cool. And definitely different than any of the greens we have here. And then I'm going to try darkening a color with black so that you can kind of see what I mean. Let's go with a pretty bright color. Let's go with the rose color, which is this one. And so with this kind of thing, you have to be really careful to not put too much black. And I think actually to avoid that, I'm actually going to take a little bit of the black from this swatch and put it here. See how little it took to make that a darker shade? And then that is really, really pretty. So your black will go, and I think I made this a little more transparent than I would normally. But yeah, so just a tiny bit of black led to that darker shade there. All right, I'm gonna rinse my brush one last time and then hold these up to the camera. And I'm going to put a link to the ShinHan Gouache page on Jackson's, and they do sell these colors individually. So if you see a color that you like but don't want the whole set, you can definitely get them individually. But pretty good. I'm pretty impressed. I think the only one that didn't really get very opaque was my mix with this. This being, you know, something that's probably prone to being more transparent to begin with, and maybe I didn't add enough of that because I wanted to make sure that I didn't make a huge swatch here with the mix. All right, well, that's all I had for you today. Feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos on my channel. I hope you have a great day. What did I say? All right, take care. I hope to see you next time. Bye.